Welcome back. Trial by Fire, Untold Stories. I'm RJ.
I am Jared Buckley.
I'm Mike Philibin.
And we have Mike Philibin. So I would do an intro for you, but I'd butcher it. You'll do better than I will. So why don't we start with give us a background. Obviously, we're talking about fire service, experiences, all that fun stuff. So let's start there.
Yeah, sounds good. So about 19 years ago, I became a carded firefighter. Grew up in the fire service. Mom's a retired paramedic after 30 years. Loved it, had an early passion for it. You know, I just remember being little Mikey that got thrown in the van for a volunteer EMS company, and we'd go to whatever it might be. Grandma fell down, car accident, and I was like, I love it. So we had an explorers program through the Boy Scouts of America, and once you were 14, you could join that. So joined that as soon as I turned 14. Kind of went through that, and then once I graduated high school, I went through fire school when I was a senior in high school. So as soon as I graduated, I got my card, and I was certified, joined our local fire department, also the fire department that my mom was a part of, and spent probably about 5 years on that department, hit or miss. But also when I turned 18, I went away to college. So once I went away to college, I could really only come back and participate on the weekends or breaks or whatever it was from college. So I was in college for probably about a year and a half, and I missed the fire service. I missed that every Monday night of a volunteer fire service or whatever it was, that the calls, the camaraderie. I was feeling that homesick piece. I went to college in Ohio University, about 4 hours from Youngstown, so I couldn't just pop into my local fire department. So I did a little bit of recon, and I found them on a call one day, and I waited for them to go back to their station to find out where their station was. Nice. It was before the internet world of, Googling what my local volunteer fire department was in Athens, Ohio. So I followed them back and ultimately stopped in, said, hey, this is who I am. This is my backstory. And I got an application, and a month later I was voted on, spent my 6 months or a year on probation, and spent quite a bit of time on Richland area fire department in Southeast Ohio. Ultimately worked my ranks from firefighter to lieutenant, captain, ended as assistant chief. But once I was out of college, my degree was in health service administration. Once I was done with my degree, there wasn't really anything in my field of study in Southeast Ohio, and I really liked Southeast Ohio, so I was like, okay, I'm going to stick around in this area. Had a good friend that was like Pepsi's higher end, spent some time in retail sales, almost 7 years at Pepsi selling sugar water. Learned a lot of valuable skills when I was there, but ultimately retail sales wasn't for me. And when I decided that it was time to get out of retail sales, I talked to my family, and I was like, I'm going to pursue the fire service, and started taking some civil service tests, started applying for full-time fire jobs. And luckily, Athens, my local hometown career fire department, was hiring. Kind of got through the process, got hired, and here I am 10 years later. Was promoted to lieutenant about 2 years ago now, and it's been a learning experience, but it's been fun. Small career, full-time fire department in Southeast Ohio.
Congratulations again, by the way.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah.
So you have the unique perspective where, some other people that we've talked to take experience from the fire service out into business world or whatever it is. You've actually gained business world experience that you've potentially brought back to the fire service.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a minute. What was some of the stuff that you learned at Pepsi selling sugar water, if you will?
Yeah.
that you were able to bring back, and was there stuff that you learned that you could use?
100%.
Yeah.
So I started at Pepsi. I was 22, 23 years old, fresh out of college, and I was, as many people in the fire service or, how rescue or whatever it might be know that I'm opinionated. You generally know where I stand. I was that quick to respond to an email, and a lot of times, I would let my emotions get the best of me, and I'd fire right back. And I wasn't afraid of trashing relationships or letting people know how I felt. And it took a little while for me to sit back and be like, okay, people aren't happy with this. People don't like this response. They don't respond well. I'm not building relationships. So that type an email, let it sit for an hour, let it sit for 2 hours overnight, then send it, or revise it, then send it. I learned a lot of real world experience about that. And, once you put words out into the universe, they're gone.
That's it.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the big things that I learned was be very cautious with your words and be deliberate with them. If you're okay with it and you can sit on it and say, hey, no, this is how I feel. I feel strong about this, or whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be negative. I think sometimes we take that with like a negative connotation. You don't have to take that in that manner, but own the words, have the accountability for the words that you put out there. And those were a lot of the things I learned. And it's not necessarily how you handle things, but it's how you approach them, how you build those relationships. It's way more of who you know versus what you know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think there's you can apply that right there to probably any position that anybody might find themselves in. So that's cool. So what would you say? So OU and Athens, right?
Yeah.
Big college town.
Big college town.
So before we get too far into that, because I'm sure that you of anybody probably has a million stories ranging from God knows what to God knows what.
Right.
Right. So what's your favorite part about being a firefighter?
My favorite part about being a firefighter, what really speaks to me, what speaks to my heart, what speaks to my soul is just the unknown piece of it. Preparing for the unknown, never knowing what I'm getting into. I don't go to a normal 9 to 5 of I clock in the morning and this is what you do from 9 to 11 and then lunch is at noon. It is the diversity of never knowing what your day holds. You might go in with a plan and nothing from that plan actually happens, but it speaks to me. It talks to me. It just allows me to excel at it as a human being, just of preparing for that unknown, training for the unknown. And I think sometimes it's cliche. It's like we're there to help them on their worst day. And there's a lot of truth to that. I'm definitely a person of service, but I really enjoy, people are having a bad day. They don't know who to call. It could be anything from their house is on fire to their carbon monoxide detectors going off to they hear a sound in the attic at 3:00 in the morning and they don't know who to call. So they call us, or maybe they called the police department and the police department's like, we're going to send the fire department because we don't really know what to do with that. And they call us to fix their problems. Whatever it is, we go fix their problems. And that speaks to me.
So a lot of people probably wouldn't thrive in that sort of uncertainty, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
So, on your team, now that you are kind of in that elevated position, are there people that have a harder time with the uncertainty, or is that something that people are coming in sort of knowing exists?
I think the fire service is changing. I wrote down a few notes before we walked in here, and one of the things that I'm not a big fan of is the fire service, 100 years of progress, of tradition unimpeded by progress. That's something that kind of irks me a little bit because the fire service is changing. There's a lot of progress. There's a lot of things that are happening. And sometimes I feel like we lose a little bit of that tradition. I have a lot of conversation. I have a lot of connections with, whether they're other chief officers or people that have been around the block for a little while. And, we have that conversation of, we don't change. Or firefighters, two things that they love, or they hate. They hate when things change and they hate when things stay the same. Mm-hmm. And I think you would have to take a step back and say, no, it's changing. I think the culture is changing. I think the employees, the personnel are changing. After 9/11, there was this push of, it's heroic, and there's bravery, and there's all this associated with it. And if you posted a fire job, there's 100, 500, 1,000 people signed up to take this test. And right now, you can pay an honest wage and have a great schedule, honest benefits, and you might get 10 people, 20 people. And then you get to the process of you have a physical agility test, and half of your candidates get knocked out. And it's like, it was posted before this test, and you didn't prepare for it. So I think people look at it maybe as a salary thing now, or it's not what some people like, older chiefs or senior members of a fire department saw when people came in. They wanted to do this. They were problem solvers by nature, and they wanted to help people. It's definitely just a spin on what the fire service is right now. It's a very unique place. And I don't want to say that it's not good, because I do think that change is good, but sometimes change isn't good. And sometimes it concerns me. And I think if we've made this move from, call it 2001 and 9/11 to where we are right now in the last 20 years, where are we at in the next 20 years? And it concerns me a little bit, because I think not everybody, I hate to group everyone into it, but generationally, I think we're getting into maybe a me culture of, what can you do for me? Not what can I do for my neighbor or my coworker or what it might be. And it's a little bit alarming, and it makes you sit back, especially like you said, with now kind of being in a little bit of that elevated role, that middle management of the fire service, a truck boss of, there's sometimes we're asked to do things that aren't convenient. You get a fire alarm at 3:00 in the morning because somebody was vaping in their dorm room. Is it convenient to get out of bed and go deal with that? No, but that's our job. We're prepared for what might be worst case scenario. And when you hear people complain about that, I look at it, small fire department in Southeast Ohio in a college town. Without college students, I don't have a job. So I look at it and say, it's time to go to work. And I get that adrenaline rush every single time. I think when that changes and I don't have that rush, I don't have that excitement, it's time to reevaluate where I am as a person, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, there's a lot of self-awareness in that, right? Like you understand that that's driving you, that's motivating you, and if it stops, maybe we're looking for something else.
Yeah.
You're probably unique, I would say, compared to like a lot of the younger guys kind of coming up. So how are you how's your role evolved now that you're in that middle management, quote unquote? You're playing more, coach, kind of mentor? How what's that looking like for you?
So it's a balance. When I went to fire officer school, there's a chief from Northwest Ohio, from Chief Smith's area, Chief Steele. He was the lead for Ohio Fire Chiefs that put on that program. And he said, when you get promoted to any type of rank, you go from buddy to boss. And I sat back, and it was like, I got in the fire service because I wanted that camaraderie. I wanted that brotherhood. I wanted that fellowship. And I wanted those buddies. And now I'm their boss. Well, small department in Southeast Ohio, it's not uncommon for it to be me and one other person on the truck. On a rare occurrence, it might be me and one or two other people on the truck. But, if you go in too hard as I'm the boss, we're going to do it my way or the highway, it's going to make your working conditions miserable. And, I'm there for 24 hours at a time. If I go in and, you and I have a disagreement and we can't get through that, well, the next 24 hours, it's going to be miserable. It's not going to be fun. And whether we're getting along or not, when the alarm goes off, you and I have to go work together.
Right.
So it's definitely a balance of how to navigate that, and where do you fly hard? Where do you stand strong? And where do you say, okay, we're gonna find some middle ground here, So that's that buddy boss balance of there's times where it's like, no, this is how we're going to do this. Or no, maybe we can negotiate this. Maybe I don't need to fly this hard. We were at lunch today and I made a reference to my 22-year-old and
Yep.
I don't have a 22-year-old, but
Just to be clear.
yeah, but on shift, I mean, it's more than half of our department has less than 3 years of service in the fire service in general, not just career, just in the fire service, but very strong opinions. This is how we should do this. This is what I think. And when you say, okay, I hear you, but this is what we're going to do, continue to try to talk you out of your plan, out of your strategy, because the thought process is I know better, or I've been there, I've done that, I've studied this, I've read this in a book, and sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and you have to live some things, you have to mess some things up to get experience. Experience is one of those things you generally get right after you needed it.
So what have you messed up that you've learned from?
I think when I first got promoted, sometimes instead of going in and saying, okay, we're still going to start at the ground level and we're going to navigate some things, it was like, well, my helmet color changed and I'm in charge and this is the decision. And sometimes you have to look like a fool. Sometimes you have to be like after a call and hopefully there's no real negative repercussions out of it. But it's like, that didn't go as planned. I was probably out of line and maybe a little bit power strong, and ultimately have to be able to self-evaluate and say, okay, maybe just because somebody is 2 or 3 years in, it doesn't mean they can't have a good idea. And I was maybe flying a little bit too hard on some things like that. So being able to sit back and say, hear what they're saying, and then evaluate, ultimately knowing the responsibility and any repercussions, positive or negative, are going to come back on me. And if it's positive, if things go like they're supposed to, well, that was just my job. They were supposed to. But if they go wrong, then that's my fault. So you're kind of in that middle ground of, when things go right, they were just supposed to go right. And when they go wrong, you're at fault. So hear out everything that someone has to say, then make your decision. Be calculated on your decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just that position really expands to anybody in leadership, right? I think fire department, Fortune 100 company, whatever it might be, it's, I think the sign of a good leader is, give praise, don't take it, but if something goes wrong, own it, right? So I think that applies to more than just, your situation. So that's cool.
I think there's a phrase I've kind of tried to live by, and that is do the right thing at the right time for the right reason, and everything else will take care of itself. That was, an athletics coach that I had said that, and that has stuck with me ultimately through my entire professional career. Like, if you do the right thing for the right reason at the right time, generally everything will take care of itself. Just have the right intent. Intent goes a long way.
I know this might sound like a weird question.
Yeah.
But how do you know what the right thing is?
Yeah. I think that's deep. That's good. I think a lot of that comes back to the experience thing. Like I said, sometimes you have to see things to know the right thing. It could be something as minor as, no, we mop the floors at night because we might get a late call in the morning and we might not have time to mop the floors. And, when somebody might give you resistance and it's like, let's wake up 5 minutes early and mop. Well, that's great, unless you're on a structure fire that you've been on since 6 a.m. and shift changes at 7 a.m. and now you get back and the oncoming shift gets a dirty station or whatever it might be. So sometimes you have to experience those things to ultimately know what is the right thing. on the actual fire ground, I think that there's so many variables of trying to, study. I think we're all a student of the game, as you will. Ultimately, unfortunately, reading NIOSH reports, reading line of duty deaths, seeing what happened, seeing how, things went bad. Most policies don't come from when things go well. They come from tragedy or somebody messing something up. So being familiar with how your department works, how other departments work, what works in the fire service, where are we today and where do we want to go? So I think that's where trying to know what is right. And then ultimately gathering that information, putting it in your bank, in your library, and building on that in the future of, I remember, back in 2016, we did this and it didn't work out so well for us. Yeah. And this is the why behind it.
Yeah. And I think that it sort of circles back around to, kind of what you were touching on with still keeping an open mind, even with your 22-year-old or whatever it is, right? Like, yeah, they're young, but they might be bringing a perspective that somebody may have not looked at a situation one way or another. And then, you in the position that you're in, bring that in, internalize it, and now you have that added to your bank for all your future decisions to be bounced off of.
Right.
And I think it isn't something that happens overnight. You have to build the bank somehow, and the only way to do that is by making decisions.
Right.
They might not always be right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good point.
I want to come back to something you said a bit ago. You said it's not how you handle stuff, but it's how you approach things.
Yeah.
Explain that a little bit more.
I think if you can approach things with a kind and humble demeanor and kind of remove some of that cockiness or arrogance that goes with promotion or seniority or experience, and you can approach somebody in a just kind of humble and kind approach, I think that ultimately answers it. That's the approach. If you go in and you're too abrasive, you're automatically going to turn somebody off. When you communicate, if you send a text message, if you send an email and it's abrasive, you can't determine that tone. But if you can have that conversation and say, hey RJ, I looked at this, how was this meant to be perceived? There's a lot that can come from that. And, sometimes, I have a great friend in the fire service that, when he has that presentation, he doesn't want to be standing arms crossed. He's like, let me sit and let that person that I'm having that conversation in walk in, and they are approaching me from a higher level, and it changes that perspective. He's like, you can still get your topic through. You can still have the conversation that you want, but just changing how you approach it, how you present it can make a big difference in ultimately how that is perceived, how that is taken. If somebody walks in the room and you're standing there and you got your arms crossed, you're already putting them on the defensive. Yeah. They're already going to find a way before you even approach what you need to approach, they're already thinking of an excuse or a reason or
guards up.
Comeback at you. So that's, I think, the approach and the presentation of that.
That's interesting. That's an interesting perspective. Because it's always, you always hear about what's how you handle it.
Right.
So exactly. I get why you asked that. And that's an interesting view where really, you're still going to have to handle it, whatever it might be. But, you're looking at like the psychology even before you get into that conversation.
I'm not that smart. I'm just
you are. Get out of here. Yeah. No. So that's super interesting. And having the wherewithal to even pay attention to stuff like that, I think is probably what's set you apart.
Where that comes from is, we had a little discussion at lunch, and, walking into the career fire service about 10 years ago, if you had an idea, you're like, whatever it might be. I'm 28, 29 at the time. And, you walk in and it's like, hey, Cap, I think we should do this. And it's like, nope, we're not going to do that. And it's like, okay, understood. Like, aye, moving on, like, fingers smacked, like, nope, done. And that was the leadership that I learned under, and I watched, and how I responded was, okay, no, Cap said no. And that's it. There was no more discussion. It was done. And now if you're like, hey, like, we're not going to do that. Nope. And it's like, well, hear me out. And it's like, no, we're done. We're moving on. It's like, no, but you need to listen to me. And it's a little frustrating because I'm like, the leaders before me didn't have to deal with this.
Right.
I'm navigating new waters.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I had to figure out that I needed to take my own approach, and the leadership of the past wasn't how I needed to form where my career went from here, because it was going to be different. I was going to have a different road than they had.
Yep.
And I think it goes back to the generational thing of the fire service is changing. The employees that are walking in the door are very different. I don't want to say their dedication to the craft, because there's a lot that are all in.
Yep.
But we have busy lives. It used to be of, my coworker, my brother, my family member that I work with, they needed help. We're going to help them. And now it's like, well, we all have busy lives. I can sit here and say, I have my part-time job that is almost as demanding as my full-time job, hours-wise. Between social media, between our phones, between our schedules, between our calendars, everything that we have going on in our lives is very different than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago.
So I'm curious, going back to tradition, going back to the concept of things are changing, how do you retain tradition in the fire service while dealing with, approaching, handling,
Embracing
the change that you're not going to avoid, because it's a new society, it's a new generation? How do you retain that tradition while adapt in handling
I
that
think
change?
you have to pick what is ultimately most important to you, or I'm going to speak to me, to what is most important to me. And I think it is not letting the past die. Tell the stories, share the experiences. We make a lot of jokes that, sometimes we hear the same stories over and over from the same guys. And it's like, you convince yourself that you were actually there. I was there when that happened. It's like, no, that happened 20 years before you got hired.
Yeah.
But it's like, share those experiences, share those stories, both positive and negative.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to laugh at, well, this one time we went to a call with the dorms and this happened and this is how we responded. Or don't be afraid to say, here was a near miss that we had and this could have went bad. I think those are the traditions more so than at 8 a.m. we check the radios, and at 8:30 we check the trucks and we swap the water, and like, not necessarily those traditions, but where we came from. It's a different fire service. We're not fighting the same fires. We're not dealing with the same personnel issues. We don't have the same kind of employee walking in the door. So, to think that we're going to have the same exact tradition and, we're going to roll in with our pointed hats and our polished shoes, and no, that's not going to happen. We're going to roll in with the 20-year-old with his hat on backwards, and it's like, where's your boots at? And it's like, I don't know. It's like, what do you mean you don't know? It's like, you're wearing Hey Dudes. It's like, yeah, that's what I got. And it's like, well, at least you came to work today.
Yeah.
So I think that being real and knowing what those traditions are that you want to hold on to, and it's not necessarily of, this is how we put the pumping gear and this is how we do this, but there's some whys behind that of, no, hey, remember back when Todd did this and this went bad on him and we got lucky and no civilians died or no firefighters died. But I think those are sometimes when I talk about tradition, that's what I'm speaking of things that have happened in the past, both positive, negative, funny, serious, sad, whatever the emotion might be attached to it, but not letting those go. Hang on to those. Keep the legacy of of those firefighters alive. You know, whether it was a good firefighter or a bad firefighter, it's like, hey, you want to be this person. You want to be Paul, who retired 5 years ago, and that was the guy you went to. If you were in a bad spot, personally, professionally, work issue, home issue, you went to Paul and you talked to Paul. Or, no, you don't want to be John, who, he just came here, he put his time in, clocked in at 7 a.m., went home at 7 a.m. the next morning. You didn't see him for another 48 hours. Like, I think those are the traditions that speak more to me than, a cow kicking over a lantern in Chicago and burning the city down.
I think there's a lot to be said about that, because I think the word tradition might even be skewed from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
When a lot of people say tradition, they probably think the alternative, like, we refill this, or we do this, or this, we mop at this time.
Right.
I think that's where a lot of people's minds probably go first when you talk about tradition. And I think you're right. I think tradition is such a broad term, but that's a really good way of looking at it. Thank you for sharing that.
For sure.
All right, let's lighten it up.
Yeah. Let's go.
Let's talk about OU.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about OU.
Yeah.
So, what can you share? Give us some.
Ooh, there's a
'cause
lot
you've been-
I can't share.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Eliminate the names, eliminate the situation. Give it a fake name. Doesn't matter.
Yep. College kids are wild. They keep life interesting.
Oh yeah.
You never know what they're going to get into. It can be.
Hold on, time out.
Yeah.
I'm not from Ohio.
Yeah.
What is OU?
Ohio University.
Sorry.
Okay.
So don't think about Oklahoma. Like
Okay.
we are the
Just-
OU, Ohio University.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, go
so
ahead.
small. So when I say small, 26,000 enrollment in Athens, Ohio. So our general population in Athens, Ohio is 26,000. When students are in session, our city size doubles. We go to 52,000, and 26,000 of those are 18 to 22-year-olds. And you can, if you think it's happened, there's, it's everything from, like I said, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm vaping or I'm smoking in my room, to, intoxicated driving, wrecked my vehicle, set something on fire, thought this was a good idea. Well, I live in my apartment complex and I hacked into the alarm system and I figured out how to reset it on my own. So when the fire department gets there, I can say, I don't know why you guys got called.
What?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, they keep you on your toes, and you have to continue evolving, because you never know. You get called to a fire alarm, you have no idea what you're going to. That you could roll in, and that place could be ablaze at 3 o'clock in the morning with 14 college students sleeping in who knows what type of a bedroom, where at, or it could be somebody that decided that they were going to bake brownies and put pretzels and bacon in it, and they fell asleep. It's wild what you get into. You never truly know what you're going to when it's off-campus housing area, dorm area. It's
Okay.
it can be wild.
I really want to know the weirdest call that you can share. The weirdest one.
Yeah. So for me, it's weird, but it's happened a few times.
Okay.
It's the amount of animal calls that we get called to.
There we go. Now we're talking.
Yeah.
Okay. Goats.
So no.
Ducks?
No. Like bats, groundhogs, skunks, like all this stuff. Like, when it's skunk mating season, it's, when you get called to a gas leak and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, that, it's a skunk. And you walk
Really?
in. Oh, and
You getting gas calls for
oh,
skunks?
Yeah. And it's it's the worst garlic, onion, burn your eyes. And it's this
And
is
it's not just college students smelling like this, or
so a lot of times I feel like it is just college students that deal with this. Apparently everybody else knows what a skunk,
I guess. Yeah.
ultimately, deep down knows what they smell like. But college kids, it's a big deal. And you walk in and it's that is not gas. I will get my detector out. I will check. My eyes are burning.
He's
They're
getting
watering.
a gas detector out for
Yeah.
skunks.
And it's nope.
saying stupid.
Yep.
Stupid.
Nothing.
Yep.
Yeah. Nothing's gonna explode here. And they're like, I think it's under the house. I'm like, call your landlord because you know what? You know who's not going under the house? Like, not going under. Like, call the city and complain. Like, they'll be open at 8 a.m. Monday morning. Like, I'm not dealing with it. And they're like, but what am I supposed to do? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't have the answer for you. It's like, it's gonna smell. Do you have a friend? Do you go get a hotel? Like, I don't know what to tell you. But yeah. Bats in a
What do you mean bats?
Like bats, like rats with wings.
Okay, I get the fact what a bat is, but
just clarifying. You're not from Ohio. I didn't know.
You didn't know what OU was.
So what are these bats doing that requires a 911 call?
They get in their house and they're just flapping around, and they have no idea what to do. So
they call you.
Let's call a spade. Most of the times they're at sorority houses, and they're massive houses with 20, 30, 40 rooms, and you're looking for a bat that can, if a door's closed, like if you could put 2 quarters in and slide it through a gap, like this bat can get through there, and you're walking around and lights are off and you got your flashlight and you're like looking around. And like the root of the issue is when you find this bat, you don't really know what you're going to do with it. So for a while, there were 2 shifts in a row I got called to bat calls. After the first one, like we came up with a solution. Like, okay,
oh, you had it figured out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, come on. We went back. We talked about this.
Yeah,
like,
for sure. You debriefed the call. Oh yeah, for sure.
So we were at the sorority house, and so we came up with this conclusion that we were going to get a piece of like diamond tread plate, like reflective, super shiny, and a big white sheet. So once we found the room that the bat was in, we've identified the hazard, and now we're gonna flip the light on, and somebody's gonna stand there, and they're gonna hold the sheet
in the doorway,
just against the wall. So ultimately, what we wanted to do is we wanted this bat to fly into the white sheet, cover it up, take it outside.
That's foolproof. Honestly,
free the bat. No harm was done to the bat. Yeah, I think
that's
so.
a true fact. Actually, they are protected.
And but like the diamond plate, like if you move it back and forth with the light reflection, like ultimately it's going to go to the sheet. And we caught the bat the second night. Like, yeah. So I mean, these are I work 24/48. So 3 days later, we get another bat call, and it's like, oh,
okay, we got this.
Hang on,
let's go.
Wait, get
the bat stuff.
Yeah, like get it. So
now you guys call yourself Batman from here on out, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Just bat call.
Yeah.
And you have the light in the sky.
So we actually do have the light in the sky.
See? Yeah. Told you. Yep. It had to come.
So we had a guy that recently retired.
Oh God.
Probably 2 years ago now, and loved Batman. Like that was his jam. So we'd be laying in the bunk room. So like military dorm, like bunk room style, like big room, common room, like lights are out. We're laying there, and like you see like a Batman symbol on the ceiling, and it was like Kevin across the room is like, oh, it's like, yeah. So, we got a lot of use out of that flashlight after the bat calls. But yeah, groundhogs scare the heck out of college kids. It's like, just let it go. Let it sit there and eat grass. Like it's not going to eat you.
They're calling you for groundhogs outside.
Outside. Yeah, I was about to.
Yeah.
Outside.
It's right next to my sidewalk.
We have a whole nother level of like metric that we have to apply this against, because you're like, oh, groundhog. But then you're like, you have to think like a college student, and then you're like, oh, groundhog.
Yeah.
Call a firefighter.
Yeah. Deer stuck in fence, like in wrought iron fence. Yeah. Like baby fawn. Like it's like you get there and this deer is like stuck at the rib cage. It's stuck between its shoulders and its rib cage, and it's like whatever kind of like baby deer noise it makes.
That was close.
Yeah. And it's like, gosh, like okay, like, and now, liberal arts college, like you have like a big it's like it's like you got to make sure you send the right crew to that. They're not rolling in and eating backstrap for dinner. So it's like I don't have time for that paperwork. Like, so it's like you got to get this like fence open, and then you got like somebody walking around with like this deer, and it's like squealing. And it's like put the deer let it go. Let it go find its mom.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's a different world down there.
It is. Yeah, and then like. I can't even. There's literally no PG Halloween stories that I can even dig into.
So I was going to bring that up because so I've been to OU for Halloween.
See bats?
I did not.
Okay.
Now that you say that. But I would say, what would you say? That Halloween party is probably...
So for a while, it was ranked number 1 on
Yeah.
the Princeton review of number 1 party schools, Ohio University.
Yeah.
It's in Southeast Ohio. There's nothing to do. You're surrounded by hills.
There's
like-
nothing outside of there's nothing.
We got 2 grocery store options, like Kroger and Walmart, and there's no mall. If you want to go to a mall or you want to go shopping, you have an hour and a half drive to Columbus, Ohio, or an hour drive to Parkersburg, West Virginia. There's nothing. It was a big deal. We got a Marshalls recently. Big deal.
Big deal.
Big deal. I can shop for clothes, and it's not just Amazon anymore. So, there's nothing to do. We're really good at partying, but current administration and current powers that be at the university are no, we don't want this party school reputation. It's well, we don't really have a reputation if we're not a party school. We don't have an identity.
What else is there? Yeah.
So, it's
So these Halloween parties.
yeah,
Wild.
Wild. You said Halloween party, not parties.
Party.
Oh, yeah.
Singular.
Biggest one in the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just
so we have
one
5
college party.
Yeah, so we have 5 blocks. Court Street's our main street through uptown Athens, and would be blocked off from the city, cement barricades. Can't get cars to pass through it, and ultimately would block it off and say, we're gonna sanction this as the Halloween party, and like RJ said, you would go from bar to bar to bar. There's 25 bars in town or something on this Court Street, and you would just bounce back and forth, close the street down. They'd put bands and stages on either end, and it was just a big Halloween party.
How long do you think that stretch of street is?
5 blocks, 5 city blocks. So you're probably a mile and a half.
Do you just post out
Shoulder
all
to
night?
shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
the entire length.
Buses of people coming in from Toledo,
Yeah.
Cleveland, Cincinnati, Dayton.
Yeah.
Just busloads of people. Drop them off. You have no idea. Drop them off on Friday afternoon and be we'll pick you up on Sunday at 11, and no idea where these kids were going to go, where they were going to end up. It wasn't a big deal. We'll figure that out later. Those are minor details, small potatoes. So, but just drop them off. So it wasn't uncommon to have 100, 150, 200,000 people in Athens, Ohio for Halloween, for block party. And that's what it was known as all around the state. The state, tri-state, there's people coming from Michigan, Indiana, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. People were, it was a destination, and it's toned back a little bit now. And then, we looked at it from the fire service side of it. At that time, our fire department was 21 full-time employees, no part-time employees, and 1 fire chief. Yeah. And it was something goes bad. Oh yeah. And, you get, not to just take it right back to the fire department, but, you get a lot of cities, you get Dayton, who's surrounded by, Kettering and Miamisburg and Centerville and other career departments.
Yeah.
Athens Fire Department is the one full-time department in Southeast Ohio. We are surrounded. In Athens County, there's 13 fire departments. Athens Fire Department is full-time paid fire department. Nelsonville Fire Department is a little bit farther north than us. They have 2 people on duty a day as a full-time fire department. Very small city, 5,000 people in Nelsonville. Other than that, the other 11 departments are 100% volunteer. No pay. Chief's not getting paid. No one's getting paid. So something goes bad. In general, you have your 4 people on duty, 2 people on the north side of town, 2 people on the south side of town to deal with anything. And then it's Halloween and there's 200,000 people in town. Halloween is the one time at the Athens Fire Department that it is all hands. It's mandatory for every employee of the fire department to be there that day. Come in at 7 p.m. on block party night, and you're there till 7 a.m. the next morning because you have no idea what the night's going to hold.
Oh my God.
And there's nights where there's not 1 call, and there's nights where there's 20 calls. You just never know.
So I went once.
Oh.
I watched somebody try and go pet one of the police horses.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
That's a bad idea. That man disappeared into the night real quick. Just gonna put that one out there.
Just leave it there.
So it's okay. So you guys have 21 people.
Yeah.
And that's this crazy event that just comes down on this town.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing to deal with that, to prep for that? Or is it just like, hold on?
I mean, so there's a lot of praying, but no, like there's a lot of prep that goes into it. So,
Sure.
So our current fire chief, he's been the chief for almost 12 years, Chief Reimer, put a lot of thought into this, the plan, the massive plan from the city side and then public safety side has evolved throughout the years as the party has changed. Ultimately, like I said, every apparatus we have is staffed. There are very specific roles. There are policies and procedures that are in place for that night that aren't in place for any other night. We get here, we get a call at this location. We are parking here. 2 people are staying with the apparatus. 2 people are walking in with police escort. We're going to evaluate the situation. If the situation calls for it, city service guys are going to move barricades so we can get apparatus here. It's going to be surrounded by mounted patrol. We're going to have police. We're going to have K9. We're going to have whatever it might be to deal with that, because in general, the public loves the fire service. We're very grateful for that. Our brothers in blue just get blasted, and I hate that for them. There's good cops, there's bad cops, there's good firefighters, bad firefighters. Any profession you can say that for, and they just get blasted. But you roll in, and it takes one kid to throw a beer bottle at a fire truck, and then everybody thinks that's a good idea, and it's like, all right, here we go,
Mob mentality.
Yeah, exactly. So, just the preparation and ultimately calling for resources early in the event. If something is going on, they've had several fires since I've been there. I think the biggest incident, and it is a big incident, we had a person get run over by a car and was trapped under a vehicle, bent in half, folded in half, and were literally suffocating in front of us. But we were lucky. I mean, we didn't have 4 people on duty that night. We had 22 with the chief, and you roll in, and it's like, take a pair of spreaders. Somebody's building some box crib, lift that vehicle up, drag that guy out, and he's walking the streets today. Where if we just had 4 people on duty, maybe that doesn't turn out so well.
Wow.
But there's everybody. It is, we laugh and joke, and I love that camaraderie, that brotherhood of having everybody together. Some of those senior guys are like, no, like get out of here. Like I just want to go to bed at 10 o'clock, and it's like, no, like I love that. That is the one night a year that the entire fire department is together. And,
sure.
It could be anything from telling stories to watching a game or whatever it might be. But I love that. But it's all hands on deck. And I always think it's interesting with the fire service. We can be telling like the most ridiculous joke, story, whatever it is, and that alarm goes off and everybody goes to work. I mean, it is a flip of a switch, and there is no more jokes, and everybody knows their job, knows their responsibility. And you're a finely tuned, finely oiled machine at that point.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's fun. And I think it's, every time we talk about something, like your perspective on a lot of stuff is super different. Like you love that night because everybody gets together.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very often, right?
Yeah.
We got FDIC this week.
Bring it on.
Mentally exhausting.
For sure.
But, that's the one time a year where everybody across the country gets together, and it's a good time, camaraderie, culture.
Yep.
I think that's so. It's an interesting look into perspective and what it means to somebody. Does it piss you off, or are you looking at it wrong?
Yeah.
So I like that you have that perspective.
I think it's that earlier on, I visited that, if I'm wore out, if I'm exhausted, if I'm tired, if I'm not enjoying this anymore, I need to reevaluate. And I think that could be said for the FDIC side of it, and the, private, fire equipment sales company of, a salesperson that's been there for 20, 30, 40 years. And it's like, oh, I hate this. I don't want to go deal with this. I look at it and it's I get to go see, brothers and sisters from all over the, not only country, but all over the world that are going to be there, and, talk shop with them, have a drink with them, share some food with them. And, when you get to that point that you're exhausted, and that's such a task, I can only imagine it from the operation side of how exhausting it is, making sure that, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. I can't imagine that side of it. But when you get there, no, that's game time.
Oh yeah.
It's the social side of sharing war stories, talking shop, talking about tips of the trade, whatever you might have learned in the last year or last 2, 3, 5 years that you haven't seen these people. And like, I love it. It's like, go get lost in the night and run into, Bobby Joe from, Southern Nevada that you haven't seen in 5 years, but you met him 5 years ago here at FDIC, and you guys created a bond, and you have that. And it's like, when your paths cross again, it's like you haven't lost touch for 5 years. It's like you've known him the
like
entire time.
You pick right back up again.
Up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that part of this industry. And it doesn't, like you said, could be 5 years. You see that person again, and it just picks right back up again.
And nobody's safe. Like, it doesn't matter if you're the probationary guy that just walked in the door, or you're the retired fire chief or the current fire chief that's about to walk out the door, and you've been there 35 years. Like, you never know if you're safe. Like, sit at the kitchen table in the firehouse, like, it might just be your day, and you're just going to get blasted all day, and you just got to own it. Like, you can't show that on your face. Like, that doesn't faze me, because if it does, like, tomorrow's going to be my day too. Yeah. Like, nah, shake that off, like, let it water off a duck's back. But that's how FDIC is. Like, there's a lot of busting chops and all that goes along with it, and it's fantastic. It's my favorite week in the fire service annually. Like, I love that week.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I got a closing question. I think Jared's got one too, because we're coming up on time. So right. I want to be respectful, because obviously I appreciate you coming in.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
So simple yes or no, and then I have a follow-up question. When you got into the fire service, did you get in thinking that you were going to move up into, higher positions, aspirations for chief, any of that?
I can't give you just a yes or a no. Initially, yes. Wanted to climb the ranks.
Interesting.
But that was a lot younger version of me. The later answer would have been no, because I look at a lot of senior firefighters that senior man or senior person role of the fire service is such that person. We were talking about Paul earlier. You had a problem at work or home or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. That's the person you lean on. You're not going to an officer or a person of rank to ask that question. Like, you're going to your guy, you're going to your senior guy. And I was like, man, like, that would be a really cool role. Because a lot of times that senior person rides up. They ride in charge anyways.
Yeah.
And so initially, I think it was that aspiration, climb as high and as fast as you can. And then when you realize that, once you take that oath and your badge changes from silver to gold, or, when that brass changes, your responsibilities change. And now if, Tyler doesn't go home tomorrow, I got some answering to do. And so I looked at that, and then I feel like every job that I've ever had in life, I've ultimately somehow climbed a ladder, whether I wanted to or not. I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse, but I was like, no, like, I don't want a promotion. Like, I'm going to stay here. Mm-hmm. And then a promotional exam comes up, and some people that I look up to or I respect were like, hey, like, I know you don't really want to promote, but you should really consider this. You might be a good fit, or you meet the characteristics or the build to do this. And I think that things would be beneficial if you were to do this. And then those people that are influential to me ultimately have influenced me into to moving into that role. So initially, yes, like, climb as high and fast as I can. And then secondhand, no, I was like, no, I want to be that senior person. And ultimately here I am, as a lieutenant.
Moving up, whether you like it or not.
Right.
Okay. So that's not the answer I expected, but neither here nor there, because I think that's super interesting. So with that perspective, is there anything that you would put out there to the young firefighters of the world that, as you've kind of climbed through the ranks and you find yourself in the position you're in now, is there something that you wish you knew before you got to this position that you know now?
I think ultimately follow your dreams, follow your aspirations. And if you have goals or aspirations to obtain a certain, whether it be rank, position, whatever it might be, if you want that, sometimes you have to go for that before you think you're ready. I think if you always wait for yourself to be ready, you'll never actually be ready. You'll never take that. You hear that applied like a lot of people in life, whether it's, having kids, getting married, whatever it might be. I think ultimately, if you have aspirations of leadership, I want to be in this rank or this role, but I don't know that I'm ready, or I don't know that I'm ready to take that next step. If you have aspirations to do it, sometimes you have to jump when you might not be ready. And that's okay. You'll learn a lot as you go. And if you've done the right thing for the right reason at the right time, you will have set yourself up for success, and people will help you. When people offer to help you, they genuinely mean that. So don't take that as just lip service. If somebody says, hey, if you have any questions or you have any concerns, let me know and I'll help you. They mean that, and don't be afraid to lean on those people. So don't be afraid to jump. Cool. It's like a little like Steve Harvey thing who, sometimes you just got to jump. Yep. You got to take that leap of faith.
It's pretty good.
Okay. So my question is, if there's anything that, whether you want to say annoys you within the fire service, is there a phrase or something that when you hear it, it just rubs you wrong? You want to correct it. You want to punch somebody. And I mean, and it could be something that is like commonly said and is usually a good thing in the fire service. But for you, you're like, yeah, I hate it. Don't want it. Don't like it.
I think, man, I hate to end it on something that I've kind of already visited, but I think it would ultimately be like the fire service, 100 years of tradition, unimpeded by progress. Okay. Because I think there is progress. We are moving. The fire service is very different than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. And for us to say, we're so hung up on tradition, it's not moving. We already visited the fact that tradition isn't what tradition used to be. Mm-hmm. So we can't say that progress isn't happening because of tradition. I think sometimes it's the evaluator of what progress is. I don't think we can look at progress and say, progress is what it was of 30 years ago of us changing from this hose and nozzle combination to this hose and nozzle combination. But it's the firefighter that's willing to go to FDIC on their own dime, on their own time, and take their own time from work to go learn of, this is how fires are burning in 2024. And this is where we think they'll be in 5 years. And this is how you have to attack those. So I look at that and say that is progress. I think we're as educated as ever. Like the firefighter, the hero, bravery firefighter of the 60s, 70s, 80s was the person that could hold their breath the longest. And we sat back and we're like, no, that's those guys just have incredible breath control, but they don't know what's happening in front of them. And we're educated now. We're a very smart fire service, like book smart. We're not burning as much stuff as we used to because prevention and education have come a long way. So we don't see the volume of fire that we had once seen, but now we're getting into these situations that we're making these grabs and we're making these saves. And ultimately, I think that's because we're a better trained fire service and we're able to sit back and be like, man, I think I'm good at that, but I actually suck at that. So how am I going to get better at it? And I'm not afraid to train. I'm not afraid to admit weaknesses and let's go attack those. And I think that ultimately comes down to, kind of the leadership or what they see as leading by example of if I can come to them as an officer and be like, man, I really jacked that call up. Like, luckily we all walked away from it and, the public was okay, but yeah, I messed up. Hey, I'm sorry. And you can take that ownership and accountability. Then you allow and you facilitate your crew, your people to be like, man, it's okay to mess up. Like, I messed up. He messed up. He learned from it. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to get better. I'm not going to let it happen again, or I'm going to try my damnedest not to let it happen again. So yeah, that'd be my one-liner, because we do have progress. There's progress in the fire service.
For sure.
There's a lot that can be taken away from that. I think anybody, fire service or not, anybody listening, I think there's a lot that can be learned and taken away from that. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. It was fun.
For sure. Let's do it again.
All right. I'll hold you to that. Thanks, buddy. See you guys.